What's an S-curve and how that can help your project there. My name is Guilherme and I'm a project management expert. I help professionals to become successful project managers. How I do that in practice can change from several ways, from providing training, mentoring, like following up the development there to make sure that people can not only understand the project management knowledge, but also apply these into practice and get results with that because that's the most important part. The topic I'm going no, and before I forgot, before I start, don't forget to like and share this video here so it can reach more people and more people can learn project management. The topic I'm going to talk about today is an S curve, and of course, just a short step back before explaining what's an S curve. At this point, if you have been following me, you understand that you need to measure a project. That's why measurement is one of the performance domains on the project management book of knowledge, 7th edition, the PMBOK 7th edition there. And the reasons to measure a project are several of them, from evaluating performance versus plan to provide properly feedback for stakeholders. Remember that your stakeholder satisfaction is going to be their expectations minus the reality. Meaning that if you don't manage the expectations correctly, which provide accurate information about the project status there, likely their satisfaction will be very low. Also, to make sure that you are tracking the resources, budget, to make sure that you have right assessment, that you can prioritize in the right way. So measuring your project is key to your success there. That's why you can have several different types of key performance indicators depending on the type of project, and one very specific, that's the S-curve that I'm going to present to you in more details today. So first of all, what's an S-curve? Well, an S-curve, it's a graphical representation of cumulative projects. And it takes that name because here in the image here you can see this image, it looks kind of an S because you start like that, then you have a ramp up until you complete a project. This curve is widely used in several industries there. So you're going to see infrastructure industry. I've worked in the past with substation. That's of course it's energy infrastructure there, engineering, procurement, and construction projects, where we track our progress and follow up using an S curve. And before I'm going to showcase to you today a real case S-curve from one of my projects there in more details. But before I go there, what's the advantage of doing that? It's visual progress tracking, so it makes it very easy to see where you are with your project. You can it's easy to detect early variance in the projects. You can identify trends. It's easier to communicate with stakeholders because if it's visual, everybody can understand it. So it's very important that you do that. So right now, what I'm going to do that now you have an idea what's an S-curve. I want to open an S-curve from one of my projects and I want to discuss that in detail. So let me put here an old project of mine. So this project here that I'm showcasing the S-curve was an engineering, procurement, and construction project to implement a wind farm. So I was the project manager of the electrical part of the project, the electrical infrastructure, including the construction part, of course, the electrical infrastructures, except for the wind towers or for the wind generators itself, because then they had a specific supplier for that. So in this project, I had a main substation, there are main power substation, where the wind farms would be connected. So there was a distribution line that would connect it to this main substation. Then there was a transmission line that would connect it to the entire system. Just to give you an idea about the scope. At the time, I think the business case for this project, if I remember well, at conversion at the time was about $30 million there. So here you see, of course, several sheets, but let me explain these one by one. So what's the idea of S curve? The S curve, then this is of course this is in Portuguese, so that's why you see some time of the names. But the S curve is built on based on the work breakdown structure of your project. So it's based on your WBS. So I mentioned to you that I had this project there. It was divided engineering, procurement, in Portuguese is suprimentos or supplies here, then civil works, assembly, and commissioning here. So what you take with your work breakdown structure, you have those big levels here, and this for the entire project. And I had smaller package, so I had different substations. That's why you see different breakdowns here. But for example, from this substation here, it always follows the same one. So you have the main project, then you have a breakdown from one substation, a breakdown for other substations for other big package. So you break down the smaller package there. And each of those packages, they were broken down, further broken down engineering, procurement, construction in general, and the construction itself was broken down in civil construction, in assembly, and commissioning part there. How do you create something like that? So let me go into the details. And before I go there, let me further explain why the S curve can be something quite nice. So you can create the S curve for all those different breakdowns that you have. For example, here you see this is a work week 17, and you see the general part or this general block here, high level. So here you can see the S curve very well. So the blue line that you have here, it's what was planned. The red line was the progress plus the forecast. So for example, when the dotted line stops here, when the dotted line starts, everything here is forecasted. So you have here numbering. Those are work weeks from the start of the project. So every week we were doing some stuff. So you can see the progress per week. So there you see the blue bar and the red bar. Let me give you a bit of a zoom to try to make it. No, it seems did not work as I was planning to. So let me. Oh. So you see the blue line there. Let me zoom in. I clicked the wrong button there. You see the blue bar here and the red bar. So that was basically what was planned versus what was executed. And those weekly bars here, they add up. They are accumulated to create the curves here, the blue curve and the red curve. Of course, what is the blue curve based on? It was based on the Microsoft project plan. So we created a Microsoft plan there with all the details following our work breakdown structure. And this structure here, we break down all the activities until you go for a more executable level. What's one of the interesting stuff if you want to use an S-curve versus, for example, Microsoft project? Here you can have these, it's more visual to see the progress like that. You can create also the graph like that to create that in MS project there. And to be honest, I've never seen it. It might create a lot of work. But one of the very interesting things of using that in an Excel file is that you can define the weights of the activities that you are going to execute. So for example, here is the complete breakdown of the entire project. So it's the WBS expanded. You have the engineering part here that's used in a different part, but you see the engineering progress here per week. This progress was based on the number of drawings. Then you have a list of drawings that needs to be issued and released, and that was based on the number of drawings that were issued and the number of projects that were released. So we had that for the civil design, for the electromechanical design, for the electrical design, and for the protection control design there. The same thing for the supply. So you break down the supply per type of equipment. You see the list of equipment that you have that the project needed I had to manage as part of the scope of the project. Then we further break down into this is still equipment. Then we further break down in materials there that they had to be bought. For this case, cables and other electrical material there. Then you move for the construction part here. And I was mentioning one of the interesting things, for example, if you are working with MS project, basically the weight of activity will be considered based on the duration of activity. So what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is just because an activity has a long duration or might have a long duration does not necessarily mean this activity is critical for the success of the project. Does not mean that this activity is part of the critical project of the critical path of the project. For example, let's assume that you are building a house and you are building a house, and part of the scope of building a house, you have a pool and you have a wall around the entire length of the house. You can fully complete the house that if your customer say, I have a deadline that I need to move, then the house will be the critical path. Why? The pool can be completed later on. But if the pool has a duration of that has a similar duration, for example, of the infrastructure of the house, those tasks, if you only look for a mass project, they are going to have the same type of weight, the same type of importance. And here, if you are using an S curve, you can define, so you define the weight of the task. So what you do in practice, you are going to take the project timeline, which all the dates that you have to deliver something. So let me see. So you are going to have all the dates that you need, the start date and the end date for all the tasks. So based on this start date and end date, you are going to break down the tasks. Then, of course, this is what I'm showing here. This is automatically calculated. You can create the formulas to do that on Excel. This task will have this breakdown here separated, or let me put in the provision there because this is the real it's where you type the numbers. So you see here the information. So you are going to have a duration of a task. This is going to be automatically break down there. So you are going to split, for example, the foundation of the house. You are going to split it. The MS project is planned to be done in 4 weeks. So you are going to take 100% of the task and you are going to break down. What's the interesting part? Then you can establish the weight here. The weight a lot of times also follows the budget of the project. So if you have an equipment or an activity that's very expensive, it has a higher weight in your S curve, but also you might want to define some weights based on importance of the tasks. For example, if you are talking about design, you can have the biggest weight or the most of the weight of the task completed when you release the design, because it's when you are going to need the design. So what you're going to do, you take your WBS, create your time. You take your WBS, that's a work breakdown structure with all your deliverables. You put in an MS project, you break down this into tasks, you create your timeline, beautiful. Then basically you copy those dates, you copy the same structure here, and you put on Excel with the dates. Why? Because if you have the formula, the Excel can make the split of the tasks based on the formula and the dates that you have there. That's the nice part, what you can do there. And with that, you are going to define the weights, and of course, it needs to be aligned with how you're going to define the weights. You need to follow something here. And then you're going to have the plan, and so you're going to have the percentage of the project that you see in the graph here that needs to be executed every week. The blue line that's going to be executed. And what you're going to do then? Then you're going to have the same. You're going to track the project, and you are going to input here if the task was completed or not. So let's give an example here for an equipment because I think that's an easy one. The equipment, okay, a surge arrestor there. Then you have the breakdown of the task, for example, of a surge arrestor. Then you need to have the purchaser order sent. You need to have the supplier creating the drawings for the equipment. Then the drawings needs to be approved. Then the supplier needs to start manufacturing or fabrication there. Then you do an inspection in the factory to confirm that it was manufactured according with the spec and it's ready. Then it's going to be there's a transportation, there's shipment there, and then there's a delivery and when it gets to the site there. So you're going to look, the purchase order for this equipment was issued, yes or no. So you can complete the task. Is the supplier issued the drawings, yes or no? So you can complete the task 100%. And based on this task, you're going to get a calculation also, depending on the week where you're going to calculate. You get a calculation how much progress based on all the tests that are being executed. That also they are going to create the graph. Let me go back some advantages of the graph that you see here. If you look into the graph, you can see very easy that you are below the schedule. That's why graphically it makes very easy. Because if you see here, the blue line, that's what we were planned. The red line, that's where we are. So you can see that in this case here, there's 13, and here the numbers also, maybe we can put it to make it easier. There's a 13% variation. So the plan was to be at 53% of the project, and right now it's in 40% of the project. So you already see a big gap into the execution. This is for this general block here. But you say, okay, where is the gap? You can have this analysis done per block. So I mentioned the first one was engineering. So here in the engineering part, you see the gaps. You see the variation in the supply chain or in the procurement part. You see the variation on the construction part. Okay, what's the variation in the construction part? And of course, in this case, the assembly was about to start. But then you see the variation in all the areas of the project. With these curves here, it makes very easy to start to localize the problem, but also makes easier to come up with a plan. So, for example, if you say, okay, I want to recover this delay, what I'm going to do there? I'm going to, in the case of construction, you're going to work on one extra day. We start to work on Saturdays. How do you recover this kind of stuff? Because the kind of measurement that you're going to do, for example, into construction, you're going to say the total construction has, I don't know, 500 cubic meters of concrete that needs to be done there. So you're going to say, oh, 500, I'm going to do that for the sake of to simplify my life in 5 weeks. So you're going to do 100 per week. You are behind it. Last week you did 80. This week you did 80. So you need to do an extra of 120 the other weeks to compensate that. When you're doing that, also at some point it makes straightforward and it makes very easy to understand if it's feasible to recover this delay or not. Because let's assume in the case of the concrete, you say I need to do it 500 cubic meters of concrete in 5 weeks. So in 4 weeks there was nothing, and then in the 5 week you need to do 500. Then you can look for this: is that feasible? Then you might find constraints for like no. With my supplier, I have the supplier can provide maximum of 200 cubic meters per week. Or no, because it was not planned, the supplier cannot provide it. And usually you need to validate the supplier to use it. For example, there was some earthwork in one of the projects I executed that I remember that we had to move 200,000 cubic meters of earth because it was in the top of a hill. We had to make a plan there in the top of the hill to build something in the top. So every day we would follow up. Oh, they had to do that. It's 2,000. They need to do 200,000. They had 100 days of execution there. So every day, did they did 2,000? Yes or no? Or they say, oh, this day they did 1,800. The other day they did 2,200. So you follow every day or every week, depending on the criticality of the task, and you can see that. But in the S curve, it makes very easy to identify it. It's a very good tool. It's broadly used in all types of projects, and it complements a lot what you're going to see in MS Project. Considering here that the weights that you're going to establish here, they are going to be defined on criticality of the something of a task. In that example I mentioned, if you're building a house, well, the pool the owner of the house might accept the pool to be delayed without major problem. But he or the family or she, they want to move for the house needs to be ready. So the house will be the critical path, and things around it might be feasible to be negotiable with some extra time. So that's also why it helps you in the prioritization. So you are going to prioritize, of course, tasks with higher weights, because when you are working on the weighting on those tasks, you are going to define those weightings as critical. Does it mean that all the projects they need to have an S curve? No, does not mean that all the projects they need to have an S curve. But that's one of the ways, and it's very commonly used when you are talking about infrastructure. Because here is one piece of the scope. Here I have the other part of the scope that I can showcase. For example, this was one substation. This was another substation. This was the medium voltage distribution lines that we had, that they had to be building the project. So it makes very easy to see, okay, where's the deviations, because you have those breakdowns in further blocks that you want to do there. And of course, then if you want to go to the level of detail, okay, what was done and what was not done, you can go here in the preview. And what I mentioned, you're going to see the details, if it was done, it was not. You're going to have the estimations. But mainly when you are looking into construction part, it makes very interesting to look there. So let's take a look in the construction part. So you're going to see what activities that you have there. Then you have a building there, or a building that would put building for the substation where all the automation and the panels to control the infrastructure would be inside of it. Then you have the infrastructure, you have the roof, finishing of the building, painting, and all this kind of activities you are going to follow up. Okay, what's the productivity that needs to happen per week there to make sure we reach that? And based on that, you can say, okay, oh, this week we did not meet our productivity target there. I mentioned that. Oh, for the concrete, we should have done 100 or 200 cubic meters per week, and we did only 150. Okay, do we have the possibility to work one extra day, like on Saturday with the team? Then we plan one extra day so we can recover this type of delay. So you're using activities that, and you can manage this in a proper way. But because this is done on a weekly base, it gives you a very good tracking. Does it make sense to do something like that for all type of projects? Depending on the type of project, will be difficult, because although, for example, if you have long design cycles there, and those design cycles, you need to break down these design cycles, but tracking progress, if you have a block of, for example, 5 weeks, and tracking progress for some types of designing, it might be more challenging, because although in this case I mentioned to you, for electrical design, I knew exactly, I had a list of all the designs that they had to be created, issued, reviewed, and approved for release. But if it's only one design that you're working on, maybe the team needs to do a simulation there. The simulation might bring different results and might need different interactions there. So that might be a bit tricky to follow up the progress there per week. Does it mean that for sometimes for suppliers also, because you have manufacturing there, with suppliers, how they are manufacturing and how they are going to check these steps? Of course, all these, it was aligned with the suppliers. We had a further detailed timeline from the suppliers with breakdowns, milestones for them to achieve it. But depending on the type of project, this might be overshooting it. I'm presenting that for you because this is a very interesting example, a very interesting tool, depending on the type of project that you're working on. If you're working to a construction project, this is a very nice one to have. If you're working with a mining, a big oil and gas, implementing a new factory, a big capex project, capital expenditures project, this is very, very, very heavily used. And all the types of industries, you're going to see automotive, construction, mining, oil and gas, infrastructure. because that will going to be a very simple way to track it. If you show to the stakeholder this graph, they can understand, okay, this is the progress. I see the gap right away where we should be and where we are now. And for further detailing, I can go for the further breakdown the graph. Say, oh, so I see the delay, and then you are going to ask if you are showing this to the customer is going to ask you how you are planning to recover that, because more the blue line and the red line they open the gap, much more challenge will be to deliver on time. You're going to need a lot of extra effort to make sure that you deliver that on time. For this project here that I'm showing you, we were able to recover the gap. And one of the activities to recover the gap was start to work on Saturdays. Because for this project specifically, I was working on site. I think I've worked on site for not 9 months. Was about the time of execution of the entire execution on site for this part of the project here. And I remember that we worked on most Saturdays there. On 9 months, so for 9 months, I worked almost all Saturdays to follow up progress, what was going on there, working the building, looking for different activities that were done. Of course, if you are working on Saturdays, the type of what we were doing there was basically crashing. Crashing is one of the schedule techniques to compress a timeline. So we were paying people extra hours to work on Saturday to try to recover these, mainly the workers that they were in the front there. Of course, you need to assess if working on Saturdays is working there, because one of the risks of crashing is you put the money and then you don't get the progress. So every week there was checking where we were with the progress, and there was a decision: should we work it or should not work? So based on that, and of course, we would follow. Does it make sense to work? Is this task critical to work? Can be done in a different way? Then, of course, there was all types of solution, and you can look for engineering solutions. You can put additional machinery there to try to look for that. But this will provide very clear information for your stakeholders. With a graph like that, and I even have few other examples, with a graph like that, you are going to be able to see all the details that you need. And you are going to be able to provide much more insights for your stakeholders in the progress of your project there. And that's why it's so much used. You can imagine for a big project that you're going to have several big blocks there. So you're going to take your work breakdown structure for an entire project. You're going to break down different blocks. In this case, we had two substations plus a medium voltage line. And inside of there, we broke down engineering, procurement, construction, civil construction, assembly, and commissioning. But you can imagine if you are a mine or for a big oil and gas or a big capex there for a new manufacturing site there, for a new building, you are going to have all those breakdowns with the suppliers, and you can organize and you provide an overview, because all the suppliers they are going to have something like that, and then you can consolidate an overview for all the supplier. That's the interesting part, because with these all those S curves from different suppliers that they were working on site, it's possible to consolidate because they come from the same WBS levels that you have there. So the macro levels are all the same, so they're all interconnected. So you can organize this in a very nice way to provide a very high level report, and we provide further breakdowns, even to localize deviations there. What's an interesting thing also about this project? Because although you see here that the gap was big, one of the things that my team was pushing me at the time was saying, let's review the baseline. Because what is reviewing baseline? Basically, I'm going to take this plan here that I have with the splits per week. And I'm going to say, for example, this week here, it's not going to be 5% because it's in the past. I'm going to put this as 0, and I'm going to put this week here as 8%. So you review your baseline, you review the distribution of the work, which can be done. And why I did not want to do that with my team? Because I've seen several projects working there They get delayed, so they negotiate, they review the baseline. They get late, they negotiate, they review a baseline, and at some point, this curve here starts to be very steep. So you okay, it should be 0, 0, 0, 0, and one day it needs to be 80%. Then you get a steep peak there. What happened in reality? Mainly, if you are handling with construction, this peak that you have there, it's not executable in the real world. Saying that the construction comes at 0, 0, 0 delayed or 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and one peak you have 1 week that you have to complete 40% of the construction. That's not going to be doable. And I've seen companies getting problems with that just because they keep reviewing, keep reviewing, keep reviewing, and then when they get to a point that they get this peak, and then it's not doable anymore. Then they need to recognize the delay. So what you're doing by reviewing the baseline, you're just saying to yourself, okay, everything is okay, because if you review the baseline, you are going to match it at least for a couple of weeks. And I've seen even other companies in the same project. While I was even comparing my baseline review 0 there, they were with the review 6 or 7. Why? Because they were doing this kind of reviews. And what I want to my team say, let's find a way that we get this back to work. It's effort, yes, but that's the only reason why we were able to deliver these on time. So very challenge. This was different challenge. I was on site, so very nice. I've learned a lot. But that's a way also you can thinking how to manage your projects there, how you can manage your project. That's a different. That's a tool that you can use into our projects. That very easily very makes communication with stakeholders easy. It makes trackable much more easy and much more direct. Instead of asking someone if you are on time or not, you can look for the data, for the plan, for the numbers, and you can do that weekly or monthly, depending on the type of project. But it makes good information that helps to manage your stakeholders in a proper way there. If you are looking to improve yourself as a project manager, don't forget, of course, to follow me for more content. Every week there's more content. Don't forget to like and share this video here so it can get to more people and more people can learn project management. And if you're wondering how I can help you, there's a link in the description here. Just click in the link and you're going to see programs that I have, upcoming free events that I have there. And because in the end, if your goal is to develop your skills as a project manager, my goal is to support you. Thank you and see you soon. Bye.